First panel, 2026. We're here. Thank you all for joining me. Yeah, first and best. I think several of us just walked off the plane, so that's pretty incredible that we all made it here. We're mostly on time, right? And I have been joined by this amazing group of panelists. We'll hide it from the wind. Honestly, we're really excited to be here. This group is incredible. We have a mix of agency, brand, and even collegiate. So
nerd
university. Well, I didn't say it. You did. And so we're really excited to kind of kick this off. We're going to dig into kind of cutting through some of what was the hype in 2025, what we expect, early predictions for 2026, and then we will dig into some of their other thoughts on kind of the media landscape and beyond. But I'm moderator Alex Boras, president of Blis, now a T-Mobile company. So I run our T-Mobile ads platform now. I have the socks to prove it. They gave them to me on my first day. It was T-Mobile Tuesdays. We got somebody who knows. And I formerly worked with Sarah at Samsung, although we didn't cross paths that often. So I will turn it over to you to introduce yourself.
So I'm Sarah Larsen. I am not with Samsung anymore. I'm with Hisense. This is probably my millionth CES, so I'm excited to open the doors.
Luke Kachersky from the Fordham University Gabelli School of Business. I'm an associate professor of marketing, heavily involved with our brand partnership initiatives, and my first CES.
Oh, I'm a veteran. I think I've been coming 20 years, and I wish I wasn't. But Paul Woolmington as CEO and Chief Bottle Washer for Cameras Worldwide.
Well, that's amazing. I mean, all of you kind of with all of kind of the experience, the CES, the Vegas gambling, the long dark eyes to show for it. Talk to me about, I want to just quick rapid fire. We'll do a quick lightning round, get this crowd warmed up, get them really talking. One thing from the past year that you thought was overhyped and we can bid goodbye to in 2026. Who wants to start?
Go for it.
I think the overhype of AI, so what I would say, the contrarian thought I have is that a lot of people are driving to the bottom and think that AI is going to make everything cheaper and produce more. Just because we can produce more doesn't mean we should. I think the contrarian view would be that judgment and taste will be the value that determines the future of AI and its application in marketing.
I would just tag up on that. I totally agree. I think the use of agentic has been overblown. It's going to be a thing.
I agree.
But I think it's going to be commodified very quickly. And you don't have home builders saying, "Hey, we use hammers to build houses as a differentiator." That's what it is. So I think we're going to see the commodification of that happen very quickly, and much more emphasis placed on human value and creativity in 2026.
For me, I'm trying to avoid AI in any answer that I give, so that was not
I
mine.
respect that.
I would say pop-ups. I am not a big fan of experiential, sorry. But particularly the pop-ups, every time someone comes up with an idea and it involves a pop-up, I typically will be turned off by it.
Okay, sticking to that theme of not kind of just putting money in the one-off and kind of staying with things that are sustainable and scalable over time. What would you do if headed into this year, and the market is flying today, your marketing budget was reduced by 15, 20%? How would you change things? How would you adjust? How would you kind of move with the market there?
So I feel like that happens all the time.
Yeah.
So it's not really new news. Unfortunately, it's always the cut by 15%, not really, which I know is the next question, but you suddenly get 15%. However, I am, as I said, I'm not a fan of experiential. I feel it is very elitist and exclusionary, and if you don't live near a coastal city or an urban center, it's not something people can join in. I tend to always like to have more of a digital component. So if my budget was cut by 15%, I would cut out any experiential that somehow sneaked its way into my plan.
Understandable.
I'm a researcher, so I have a little different perspective on this. For me, if the budget was cut 15%, this is where I'd want to lean into those efficiencies and the commodity that AI is, and use it specifically for quantitative data collection, because that's where you can use AI to scale and get those efficiencies.
Yeah.
I would, again, a contrarian thought, I would be careful of chasing the soft last point of attribution, which I think the pendulum shifts when there are budget cuts to that last point of attribution, and that gets the omnipresence. I would double down on quality. I would, in a world where there is such commoditization, there is too much personalization, most advertising is wasted. 90% of it is you can put a pile of money and just burn it. So we don't need more of that. We need more quality communication. So with 15% less, I would think even more carefully about the quality of personalization, the quality and relevance of that impact. And to build on a point I think I was making earlier, that I would look very carefully at not sacrificing brand in genuflecting in front of the CFO and having a very blunt last attribute performance metric.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I know we're going a little bit off script, but I kind of want to bring that to the brand and ask Sarah, how do you deal with that, right? When you're standing up there in front of your CFO and they're asking for savings and cuts, how do you say, look, we're Hisense. We got to protect the brand here. We're here at CES. We've built out this whole booth. We've got beautiful screens here. How do you continue to justify that investment when there is so much of this kind of down funnel metric pushing?
Well, I think the nice thing is, particularly at Hisense, is that leadership is very open-minded and reasonable. So as long as I can provide the numbers to back out why we're doing what we're doing, I get a lot of positive reinforcement around it. When it particularly, though, comes to brand, I don't think they're mutually exclusive.
Yep.
Like, I can do great bottom of the funnel type of performance marketing that still drive brand awareness. So I actually think you're missing it as a marketer if you feel it's one or the other. You should be doing both with everything you do. And I know for us as marketers at Hisense, we have sales goals attached to everything we do. So my programs are not a success if I'm not selling product.
I mean, I think I see Paul over here applauding.
Yeah, I know, I would applaud that completely. I think in a digital age, you can do both simultaneously. And I, absolutely applaud people who are thinking that way, as opposed to there is a bucket and there is a trade-off. You can actually achieve both. And I think to build on it, I think if I were to put any investment, and maybe it builds on a point you were making because you're a researcher, I would double down on data storytelling, and I would actually, the literacy at the C-suite, the literacy across the organization, the literacy down and through the organization, respecting each silo, because basically we have measures that will justify everyone's existence. Everyone in this room, every supplier has a data point that will justify their manufacturing plant and their existence. But who is the Sherpa? Who is the bard and the storyteller in that world of complexity, the attribution complexity of brand and performance? And I do agree. I think you can do both. But actually finding, you go to Google are going to say the answer is Google now. What was the question? You go to Meta, you go to NBC, you go to any supplier.
No one's in the room. Nobody.
But the double down on the attribution and the next, I think, frontier of data storytelling, whether it's a CMO who's actually telling stories to the board, to the CFO, to the C-suite, across the organization, but also respecting the silos. But the silos are actually the death of marketing, because everyone comes in with their KPI, and their KPI is a very siloed KPI, and it doesn't look at the broader storytelling picture.
Yeah, go ahead. I know, this is like teeing you up.
Hopefully that was
I mean, I totally agree with everything. And I would say the main KPI that matters, and especially to bring brand and performance together, just putting customers first, which sounds like the oldest thing in the marketing book, and yet people get in roles and they lose sight of that. We've done research where, I mean, you're going to hear a lot of presentations about products and that they bring families together and they make people feel better about themselves. And are there KPIs that tie to those things? Can you measure that, oh, this family is now closer because they used our product? And it sounds silly, but you can measure those things, and we've measured those things. And actually, we find that brands that do better on making those kinds of differences in people's lives, it shows up in their brand performance. It shows up in word of mouth. It shows up in brand financial value. They're tied together. So it's definitely not a trade-off between performance and brand, as long as you put customer first.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think, when you think, look, I work for a consumer-facing company, and if at T-Mobile, we don't put the customer first in everything we're doing. You referenced T-Mobile Tuesdays. These are like give-backs to our customers. These are things that we want to embrace that return value to our customer. And so I think, that makes complete sense and resonates with me. I think one of the difficult things is, how do you quantify that? And, I think from my standpoint, I'm sitting here and I'm like, all right, marketer, Sarah, what metrics are you using that are gaining support internally? And what metrics do you feel like are going by the wayside that we can no longer care about anymore?
Yeah, I definitely, our number one metric that I look at, as I said earlier, is sales. Like, I look at every marketing thing that we're doing to see if we're driving sales. And if it is not driving sales, it's ultimately not going to be prioritized. I think from what are we moving away from? I don't love ROAS. I don't feel that it's really the greatest way to measure success. I would much rather dig in a lot more to conversion and to click through and engagement rate and finding out how much we're connecting with people. How are they sharing our content that we're doing? That means more to me than a ROAS number or even just a general reach number.
Got it. I mean, look, that makes sense to me. I think maybe one of the struggles that we've had in the past is kind of working through these proxy metrics and getting to that sales number and making sure that it's correctly attributable. Paul kind of touched on this earlier. Not to kind of lean back into this, but how are some of the advancements in AI and tooling, how is that making things easier? I'm going to go to Paul on this one since he referenced AI to start with, but what are you introducing at an agency level? I feel like every agency is starting to spin up an AI practice, and I assume Canvas is not dissimilar from the rest of the community, but I think it makes sense, and I think it can add efficiency to a marketer's plans, goals, certainly data attribution, data collection, all those kinds of things.
Yeah, I think we're over AI powered. Please, no more AI powered. One of those kind of cliches, and no more companies that have .ai. Enough of that already. That happened 2 years ago, last year. It's 2026. It's about operationalizing. So we use 3 H's. So it's hero. So what are the hero applications? How do you solve business problems through maybe AI applications, and how do you operationalize that? So whether it's selling cars on Amazon, for Hyundai, one of our, we're exclusive in category, selling cars actually on Amazon, and how we're using AI, how we're working with the algorithm experts at Amazon, with our own experts to actually convert those. For Zillow, how are we actually cleaning up the internet? There's a lot of nefarious digital waste out there. So we were able to, through AI, prove that we can actually clean up the internet, have higher quality, pay a premium, and blast the metrics off. So that's brand and performance, higher communication, higher engagement, higher premium, by the way, which is, it's heretically for me to say as a media executive, we will pay a premium if you can, if we can prove it out. And many other examples. Hygiene is going to be operationalizing efficiencies, process, project management. How do we do all those things? How do we do it internally? How do we make billing systems more efficient? How do we, all of the operational hidden hygiene aspects? And a lot of that has already, for years, been AI-driven in a media sphere. And hubs, how do we work with Microsoft? How do we work with Amazon? How do we work with big partners like Google to partner, to ask them, how do we solve this problem together? And those are going to be the hubs, because we can execute through those hubs, as well as obviously partner through those hubs. So we say it's operationalizing through hygiene, hub, and hero.
Love that. I love a good acronym. Sorry. I mean, it's advertising. We all love it.
If my mum can understand it, then
it
I
works.
think then.
I love that. So when we're thinking about, God, I'm going to screw up the 3 H's. Give me the H's again. Hub, hero.
Hero, hub, and hygiene.
Hero, hub, hygiene. Specifically on the last point, hygiene.
Yep.
How do we start to, you mentioned quality earlier, and you've kind of touched on quality a little bit. How do we determine what is quality, right? How do you filter that noise? Because hub, hero, hygiene, I'm hearing that, but maybe there's filtration.
Taste and judgment.
Taste and judgment.
Taste and judgment. That's what the algorithm can't do.
Research, not me search, and then I'll turn it over to Lou. Because that's how you know what quality is. It can't be your own gut opinion. It has to be looking at what the research is saying.
Yeah, and
the academic definitely doesn't agree with that.
No, I mean,
He loves to spar with me.
I'd love to spar with you. No, but on this point, I agree. And it takes the exercise of thinking. So you can't just offload to AI. That intuition, judgment, it comes from working those things. And even if your judgment, you make a wrong call, it's going to happen sometimes, but it's going to put you in a better position for the next time. And it's important for brands, for agencies to allow people to do those things.
Okay, so then I'm going to go to you, and then I'll go to each of you. But I want to stay with you for a minute. Luke, how would you recommend, right? Because you're a little bit on the outside looking in. How would you then recommend a brand takes those pieces and feeds them back into their planning cycle, right? Like, planning has evolved over time, and now we have an opportunity to reshape that using different tools, different kind of media. How would you kind of advise like your students as they're going about these projects and kind of putting things together? How would you think about that?
I wouldn't be intimidated by it being that big of a change. So you have another tool that you're using in the process. I don't think it has to alter the process all that much. It's going to speed it up, but I don't think it's going to change the fundamentals of how the process works, personally.
Sarah, how do you, when you're either working internally or getting plans from the agency, how do you kind of see about that insights-based kind of planning approach with all these different data points, getting kind of the sales data fed back in?
First of all, I start everything with insights, and not just start it, but continue with it. And it's so important to not go forward with something just based on what you think you know. You need to continually be course correcting and double checking your data points, because one of the biggest mistakes I've seen marketers make is assuming, for example, they know who their audience is. And it might be 3 years since you've done a path to purchase, and you're going off of data that happened at the tail end of COVID or something like that. Consumer behavior changes so fast that we are behind the 8 ball if we're not at least every 6 months, if not every 3 months, double checking that what we think is really what it is. And how we're able to even be able to test that in real time. Pause for
Good
the
to
plane.
be outside, but also some
Loud.
background noise sometimes.
It's all right, I can talk over it. So the other thing that we do is community testing. It's so important to have a base of intenders that are in your demographic set that you are regularly going out to with everything that's big, from a campaign thematic to even, wow, I'm really competing with this. I feel like it's personal now.
So what I'm hearing you say is adaptability is important both on stage as well as for marketing.
Absolutely. I go with the flow. But no, I think it is so important that we are testing both the big things and the small things, even down to like a promo idea. What do consumers want to get with purchase? Things like that we still put into community and trust those numbers.
Yeah, just to build on it, I couldn't agree more. I certainly absolutely believe in the research. I believe in insights, absolutely fundamentally at the core. But the interesting thing, I think, just reversing it back to AI, we've been building agents that will help us garner. I hope there's no
Are we under
drug.
attack?
Yeah, coming back.
Are there any
around.
Latin American
Oh boy.
presidents in the audience
It's your fan, Sarah.
hiding out here in
I'm
West
glad we
Wing?
got there on this
Sorry.
panel.
The agent thing was just to say we're building it so that we have iterative steps. I think it will speed up the process of garnering insights, and I don't think anyone, but it's ensuring that what we're relying on is the right sets of research, and that's where the human intervention, where you have an insights group from a brand or from the agency, people who are really thoughtful about it, understand what is behind, let's say, an AI agent that is helping you get to pro forma insights initially, and of course can ingest a lot of research, but you need those human interventions. So we're building in interventions where you can say, I don't trust that research, I trust this, we need to ingest this is how we infuse our data, not just public information. So I think we're going to transform how quickly we can pro forma insights or almost anything.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's so benching up, benchmarking, it's always been part of your process, right? It's just that you can do it much quicker now and keep tabs on what those important metrics are and everything.
So coming back to Sarah, what do you think we're testing now, we're experimenting with, we're learning that, by the end of 2026, we'll be sitting up on this stage in 2027, and we're going to be like, yep, that's done. Don't need to talk about that anymore.
I can't think of a single thing that we're going to say is done. I mean, I feel like everything's an evolution. We test a lot. I am a big proponent of pilots. I love test and learns. I love A/B testing. I basically just enjoy all of that because I like taking the small things and seeing if it works. And if it doesn't, fail fast and learn from it. And if it does, then scale. But there's not one single thing I can think of that we're going to solve by the end of this year. And I think that's almost naive to think that something in marketing is solvable. And that's the beauty of marketing. It's always evolving.
Yeah, that's how we all stay employed.
Yeah.
Did you have anything, Paul?
Well,
right.
I think all I'd say
You're
is
like,
you
no,
got
but yes.
Yes. Oh, I saw. I thought he was going to jump in. I wasn't
embrace the messiness. I think you've just got to be in that world where you just utterly jump in and embrace chaos and messiness.
All right, that makes sense. Luke,
I truly have nothing.
no, I wasn't going to come to you with this one. I was going to switch our topic a little bit. All right, Luke, from your perspective, kind of sitting and watching this all play out, how do you see brand and performance coexisting in 2026? And I'm not looking for just an attribution thing, but I would like to hear a little bit kind of academically how you all are starting to think about it and shaping the thinking of the young minds coming out.
Well, this is purely from my ivory tower. I mean, it goes back to what I said earlier. I don't think they're in tension with each other. If I look at it from a high level and from theory, and they coexist in perfect harmony. You put the customer first, your performance is going to thrive, and your brand is going to thrive. But you have to put the customer first.
A bit like Paul McCartney and Michael Jackson, I think.
Yeah.
Shall we do a sing-along? Yeah.
Not with me, but if there's someone in the crowd. Okay. And then in terms of kind of measurement and key metrics and things like that, Paul, what is one thing that you are focused on that is a metric that you're going to look at a little harder, or one that you'd want to throw out in 2026?
I mentioned data storytelling, and I think the thing that we are obsessed with is trying to use new techniques layered on old techniques to figure out outcomes. Again, without overly repeating myself, there are lots of siloed measurements, too many, as platforms and media and techniques atomized. But how do we bring it together, or how do we have the Sherpa at the brand, I would think the CMO is going to be the Sherpa within the brand, and who are going to be their partners who can double down on that narrative and how you really get to a more nuanced understanding of outcome, the ultimate business outcome, and what is the contributions of all of the techniques, because there are so many measures, there are so many tests, there are so many, there is a lot of confusion out there. And I think, unfortunately, as the world is atomized in measurement, the Googles and the Metas of this world have succeeded in seizing the moment. They are omnichannel, certainly Google is omnichannel now, but they have for years gained over credit for that ultimate final click, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think, self-attribution is real, and it works. And if you have all the data, then you can do it. But yeah, I think seeing the CMO or the agencies take some of that control back is certainly something that I think the industry's been waiting for a little bit. I think the tools now are there. I think you can query a little bit faster. I think AI actually is super beneficial in that instance. And I think you can derive insights a lot faster from that. When we think about kind of this evolving media landscape, when we think about creative-driven media, and what does that look like in market today, and how do we then take those? We talked a lot about data, frankly, which I'm, I guess, somewhat surprised about. Maybe not so much on this panel, but how do we bring it back to creative? How do we start to deliver that message? Because at the end of the day, as a consumer, creative resonates with me. Yes, the placement matters, but I'm not trying to create a focus group of one. Also, the right creative, it is impactful for consumer groups. And so how do you do that while still kind of keeping that insights-driven approach?
So for us, content is king, and I am a big believer in that. To your point, if you have an unbelievable media distribution plan and your content sucks, guess what? It's just throwing your money away. Conversely, if you have a very restricted budget and you have unbelievably smart, insights-based content that really connects with your demographic, and and understand them well enough that you can put something forward that's going to stand out in the sea of sameness, that could be driven with a tighter media program and still have even better results, because you're going to connect with people. That's why I care about engagement rate more than I care about reach, because I want to know what people actually are doing and engaging with our creative. So for me, the best content is where I put a lot more of my money than necessarily in a huge distribution plan.
That makes sense. I mean, so then how do you make sure that somebody sees it? I guess that's my next question. Sorry.
Well, yeah, no, I think you have to be very highly targeted in your distribution plan. And certainly segmentation is so important. And that's where AI does help a lot. And then building lookalikes. If you don't have a big enough audience, you want to start looking beyond your 1P data and 2P data. And you're looking at the closed ecosystem on social media, for example, and how you can capture people throughout their journey that might not be fans of the brand yet they demonstrate all the attributes that they will likely be fans of your brand.
Got it. I'm going to ask you, and then I kind of want Paul's opinion as well, but when you're thinking about media, and Paul just kind of touched on this, right? We live in a very walled garden world, right? So Meta, Google, Amazon, there'll be a lot of, words spoken about them, as well as, ink spilled on their behalf this week. But I guess when you're thinking about that and you're thinking about doing budget allocations and those kinds of things, how do you make sure that you kind of devote to other channels, that you make sure, Mark Pritchard came out a couple of years ago and said, look, linear TV, we're doubling down in linear, right? How do you make sure that every piece sits at the table and has that voice to drive that core consumer message?
So for me, it's almost beyond a traditional media plan, because what I want to do is create a surround sound around my consumer, so that at every touch point, they're being exposed to incredibly personalized, laser targeted messaging that will resonate. It takes a person 7 times to hear a message before it sinks in. So if I'm only dependent on a paid media strategy, I'm going to miss so many intersections that I'd have with my consumer. that's why I love in a CMO role having every different type of marketing and even non-traditional marketing under my organization, so that when you walk into a store and the POP that you see, and then you go home and you're listening to something in the car on your way home, and then when you get home and your kid is talking about something they saw on TikTok, there's just so many different areas where you can be exposed to a message. I need to make sure they're all working in concert together.
Yeah, I think that's 100% the answer, isn't it? It's not a media plan, it's a communication plan. Everything communicates. Every form of content communicates. Your CEO, if he or she is a high-profile CEO, what they say is content. Your annual conference to your B2B audiences can be very important content. Getting them motivated might be worth 10x more than a paid media. Your public relations, obviously in a world of influencers, in a world of the explosion of what was social, what is influencer, what is creator, how do you factor that in? What is that divide between what used to be necessarily public relations? So I think you do start, and I was lucky enough to have run a company called Naked Communications, who popularized the idea of communication planning. Everything communicates. So in a world of vested interest, who gives you the naked truth? Because again, an agency that makes a lot of money out of producing TV commercials is biased. A public relations company that wants to sell you public relations ideas is biased. So in a world of bias, how do you actually build that Marcom plan or comms plan? And I think you have to think about that. So CES, there will be huge announcements here that will be communicating at a very, very high level. That may be halos to a brand. They may be innovations that we will not see for a decade or more, but they will have huge relevance and resonance. And how do you factor that into? And the last thing I just would also say is that we have historically been obsessed by optimizing media. And yet media is probably at maximum, the FEs will say, maybe 40-ish% contribution towards effectiveness. And your messaging and everything else is omnipresent as well. So I would say a big rallying cry would be, stop obsessing about that CPA and your media planners. Obsess about how you're measuring your content in that communications ecosystem, as well as obviously obsess about your media.
Look, I agree with you all. I'm sitting here as a media and marketing professional as well, and everything you're saying is resonating with me. Thank you all for such a thoughtful conversation. We're going to switch gears to the fun part of the show, where we get to make predictions about 2026. What is one thing? We'll go left to right. No, you want to go last? Okay.
I feel like I've been talking too much.
Okay. Fair enough. Well, we could jump around too. Let's start with Luke. Hasn't spoken in a little bit. Yeah, jump around later tonight. One thing in 2026 you see coming. One thing you're excited about in the advertising landscape. Something that you think we'll get here in 2027, and we'll all be kind of jazzed to talk about it. We're not just going to be kind of, the advertising industry likes to, blow through new concepts, and then we get really sick of talking about them really quickly, like Agentic. But talk to me, Luke.
For me, it's going to be the pushback from consumers on canned content, AI content that has AI as its foundation. I mean, slop, I think, was the word of the year last year, the Oxford, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a word for this stuff now. So just, culture is already sick of this stuff. And I see brands being responsive to that. And I think that's just going to accelerate in 2026. I'm excited about that.
Just picking up on, I just had an issue of thought. Apparently Pantone said that the color of the year is going to be a slightly creamer white. I hope not. I mean, this is like completely, utterly bonkers.
Dancing cloud.
Although I do like
I just met with Pantone this morning, so I'm up on this.
I'm going to pivot away from AI. I'm just going to say I'm so excited about FIFA coming to our shores. I'm so excited about how sport has exploded. I'm so excited about I've got a funny accent, but I'm totally American. I became American because we win everything, and we invite the Canadians to play. We let the Canadians play, and then we win the world championships. But now you will literally have, every country around the world represented. But you've got the in-out. Because of the fragmentation of media, we're seeing lots of sports just blossom in America. Soccer's become a huge phenomenon beyond, what you call football. So I'm really loving that. The other thing I'm really going to love is culture. I just want that redefinition of what culture really means. It's not. I'm kind of over Hollywood a little bit, even though we do represent a big Hollywood studio. I'm just, it's not one dimensional. It's going to be defined by individuals. It's going to be defined by really interesting things happening, I think, in 2026. So that's what I'm really looking forward to.
Well, it just so happens Hisense is a sponsor of FIFA World Cup.
Just so happens.
So I'm pretty excited. But you know what? It's funny because my answer was going to be, and you hit on it, the intersection of culture and FIFA. Does anyone know Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce's wedding date is the same day as the kickoff of the first FIFA game? Yes. So we're pretty excited about what's going to happen from that.
You should supply them some product.
Oh, we are 10 steps ahead of you, my friend. 10 steps ahead of you.
Hope they're playing the World Cup on Hisense at the reception. Well, thank you all. This was fantastic. The year ahead is, if you're not excited for it, and these folks haven't gotten you excited for it, it's exciting.
We did not do our job then.
You did not do your job. Yes, we're off to a bad
Jump
start.
around.
Yeah, and we will jump around and do karaoke later.
I will be rapping, naughty
We will
by
be
nature.
somewhere. Oh, can't
And
wait.
AI certainly
Not 'cause I
can't
hate you.
do that. AI is not going to score that World Cup winning goal.
No, AI will not be. There will be a human element part of everything, and it's going to be an incredibly exciting year ahead that will be both data-driven, but also human-centric at the end. Thank you all. Have a great
Thanks.
year.
Thank you.
Thank you.